So we know that sex before marriage is a sin. And if you've dove deeper into the Red Pill archives at some point in your self-improvement journey, you've probably seen the graph of how body count affects divorce rates and marriage, right? For those of you that haven't seen it, basically it shows that the less sexual partners you have before marriage, the higher your chances are of having a successful marriage. So the more partners you have, the higher the divorce rate, basically. And it was quite interesting because as I was seeing this graph, obviously from like a secular perspective, it's like, oh, well, obviously it makes sense. If you're going around sleeping around creating soul ties and stuff before you get married, it's obviously going to be more difficult to build a connection when you are married. But thinking about it from a biblical perspective, it's so interesting because this is why I made a video some time ago saying that like the Bible's the ultimate self-improvement book, right? Because everything we learn from like body count and like marriage to like delayed gratification to like not being gluttonous and everything, it's all there in the Bible, and like we're all just seeing now that it's just fact, right? But one of the interesting things I saw was at the start of that graph, right? So basically what it said was, from what I can remember, if you have zero sexual partners and you don't have sex before marriage, right? So you literally save yourself for marriage, like honeymoon night, your chances of like marriage success are like 74%, right? But if you still have that same partner, so say you've only ever had one partner in your life, right? Like say like high school sweetheart or whatever, but instead of waiting until the marriage, instead of waiting until marriage, you guys have sex before marriage, and then you get married and you have sex after. Just that alone, like your chances of like having a successful marriage dropped to like 68%, which I found really interesting because it's like, bro, God is literally just out here telling us, like, bro, stop doing this. There's a reason why you should stop doing this, because it's, well, he knows, obviously, and now we just get to see it like play out. But from that study, we all kind of have a similar conclusion, which is just like degeneracy is not good for your marriage, right? I think we can all agree on that one. And I think the conclusion a lot of us do come to is that like, oh, okay, if you're a virgin, that means you're basically like pure and you'll have a good marriage, right? But I agree with that. But one thing that changed my perspective was I was at a young adults, like not a conference, it was just a meetup at this big church, right, Rivers in Santon, and they were having like a couch conversation. I don't know if you can picture like you're in like a big auditorium and there's like a few people sitting on a couch on the stage and you're just having a conversation, asking questions to the crowd, and they were speaking about like purity at some point, right? And it really changed my perspective because they spoke about how purity is more than just it's more than just physical purity. And I don't have the Bible verse on me. I think I actually spoke about this with my friend Darian on our podcast that we have. Go and subscribe. It's called the Jesus Convo Pod. We had like 4 episodes. We posted every Sunday. We had 4 episodes for a whole month just on relationships. It was insane. But one of them we spoke about purity, and I think that's where I definitely went further in with like the Bible like passage that I saw that changed my perspective on that. But basically, as I've said, like purity is more than just like physical purity. It's more than just, oh, I haven't done anything, I'm gonna be a virgin until marriage. It's also like a mental purity, right? That's why the Bible says do not covet. Just going back again to God's wisdom and how we just can't understand it. And as we go through life and we follow his teachings, you get to see like the evidence of that, oh, he is right? But it obviously takes us a longer time to understand. That's why I don't know if it's one of the commandments, but I know it's just one of the things we shouldn't do. And it says do not covet, right? Because in your mind, when you hear like a do not covet, it kind of seems like, okay, it makes sense, like this is like from people looking outside in, it's like, oh, it's a religion, so of course, oh, you do not covet, it's just like more stringent rules. But there's a reason for that, right? Like the purity is more than just physical, it's also mental purity. So if you're, okay, you might be like, okay, I'm a virgin, so I'm pure, right? Not really if you're out there like watching porn like every day, bro. If you've been part of the pandemic that we've gone through of our generation, particularly Gen Z, and basically ever since porn was invented, you've been watching for like a decade throughout your teenage years, and maybe you've really decided to like start reining it in. You found self-improvement, you've really built your relationship with God, and you've like kind of stopped. If you've been doing that stuff for like 10 years, in your mind, you've basically been sleeping around, right? And it's crazy because like we just think that like, oh no, I haven't really done anything. I haven't created soul ties, and you haven't created soul ties, but that does not come without a cost. And as I've said about like the whole like disrespecting your future wife thing, it's quite interesting because one of the reasons for divorce that are like on the rise now is literally just, it's not even like cheating. Cheating has always been like a number one reason for divorce, but one of the ones that are climbing up now is porn addiction. Like, there are guys who have a porn addiction, and then they're like, okay, one day, and you probably think this as well, right? You're like, okay, when God gives me a wife, I'll stop being addicted to porn. And it's so stupid. It's just stupid how we tell ourselves these things, right? It's like, oh, when I get this, then I'll stop being addicted. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. These men are carrying their porn addictions into their marriage. And that's what I mean when I say like you're disrespecting your future wife. I just want you to think about it this way, just genuinely. If you're like you're in your walk with God, right? And you're thinking, you're waiting for like your future wife to come and everything. And it's like God has picked out the specific like woman to be your future wife, right? He's also picked out you as like her specific man to be her future husband, right? Like you guys are meant to like come together and be one. So think about how okay, you're not sleeping around. Good, like good for you. Please carry on. Don't go sleep around. That is definitely not gonna work because it's definitely not gonna be helpful to your marriage. But you've been watching for like a decade, right? I don't know how old you would be watching this video. Say you're like 24. You've been watching since you're like 14 or like 12 or something. Because, bro, they're kids. Literally 2 years ago, my complex, there were kids 7 years old, bro. They were telling me this. And they just told me out of nowhere. I think it's just because, I was just an older like guy, and they're like, oh, I want to tell you like this. And they're like, oh, I was watching like X videos or something. I was like, no ways. 7 is crazy. But yeah, they're kids literally that young watching it, and it's really bad. It's fundamentally bad. But just say you've been watching for that long. Say you watched for like, let's say our generation, right? So a lot of us, you'd say maybe you started watching when you're like 12. And then, maybe at like 18, 19, you kind of found like self-improvement. You like started trying to quit. And let's say by the time you're like 21 or 22, you fully like quit. You've done like 10 years. 10 years of solid like watching it every day. Think about what that does to your mentality. And now you're carrying that into your marriage. Like, first of all, it's an addiction, so very unlikely it's just gonna fall away. If you try and like get rid of it before you get married, like you should definitely do that. That's literally the point of me telling you this. You should do that. But if you don't, like I had a friend, right, who I was speaking to, like it was like 2 years ago from uni. Like we'd get lifts together, and he had a girlfriend, right? And I don't know why we were speaking about this, but the conversation went there, and I found out that like he literally watches it, and I'm like, in my head I was like, you're in a relationship, bro. And he's not Christian or anything, so they're like sleeping together. So in my head I'm like, ish, that's bad, bro. That is bad. And not like from a judging perspective. I'm not making this video to like judge anyone. I'm just opening up your mind to like the concept of purity, which is something my mind was opened up to as well. But in my head I was like, you're in a relationship and now you're still watching porn. Like, they cannot be good. And as we're seeing now, like nowadays, like the reasons for divorce the reason for divorce due to like porn addiction is going up because you're bringing this into your marriage. And going back to what I was speaking about, where God has picked out like the perfect like future wife for you, and you're like your future husband, like you guys have been like picked out for each other, right? That's a daughter of God that He's trusting you. He's trusting you with her. Yes, he's trusting you with her, and you're bringing that into your marriage, and now you're gonna hurt her. Like, you're really gonna hurt her. Like, divorces are not fun. I think we can all agree on that one. You're gonna hurt her because of like what you're watching. And when you're a kid and stuff, it's like it's not your fault. Like, it's really not our fault that we got caught up in all of that because we're kids and like you're on your phone and it's all just in your face. It's really bad. But like, I'm just saying, like, for now, like, you're watching this right now, you can do something about it. Change your mentality from being like, oh, it's fine, like, oh, as long as I'm not sleeping around, then I'll be fine. It's not good for your marriage. And again, you just don't get away with that. Like, mentally, just think about how messed up it is. Like, your concept of sex is fundamentally just changed. Think about the type of videos you'll be watching on there. I don't know what type of videos you watch there, but it's porn. It's gonna be messed up, right? And it's not at all. Like, if you've heard stories about like that industry and like just how it is, it's bad. Like, that's not like enjoyable for anyone. Well, I don't say for anyone, but it's definitely not enjoyable for the women there, right? It's not good. And that's how you see, like, that's literally how you see like how sex is supposed to be. And now you're gonna go into marriage and you're gonna try and do that, right? Not a good look. It's not good at all. But I hope I've really like opened up your mind to like what purity is in this concept, because yeah, for me it really changed a lot. And yeah, an interesting part I want to speak about is that like you probably think, I thought it as well. Like you probably think that like, oh, once you have a wife, all your problems will go away. And in this particular case, you're like, oh, once I have a wife, then my porn addiction will go away. But that's the like mindset God is trying to get us out of, right? It's that whole saying that's in the Bible where it says, "He who is faithful in a little will be faithful in a lot, and he who is not faithful in a little will not be faithful in a lot." Right? Your ability to stay pure, not just physically but also mentally, when you're single, will determine your ability to stay faithful when you're in a marriage, basically. Right? And when I say stay faithful, I'm not just speaking about like adultery. As I've said, this is more than just physical, because I know for like a lot of us, I know for me in my head, and again, this is why I'm saying like in my head, because you don't know how it will be when you're actually in there. But in my head, I can never ever see myself cheating. Like for me, that's like, yeah, it's treacherous. I can't. It's not something I can see myself doing, right? But even if you're like me, like in that regard, and we probably won't. Like even if it's not that, mentally as well, can you promise that like you will never watch a porn video while you're married? Like if you can't break it now, how on earth are you gonna break it when you're in a marriage? Like I know it seems like it'll be easy, but marriage is long, bro. It's long. You start taking each other for granted, and the same things start creeping up again. And you don't want to bring that into a marriage. And as I said, like, bro, that's a daughter of God that God has trusted you with, and like you're gonna hurt her with that. You're gonna hurt your marriage. You're gonna hurt your relationship with your kids. Not good. And this sounds like a lecture. I'll be like, not good. No, but like genuinely, I think it's something we should think about. Like, it's not okay to just keep going on with just being like, oh, it's fine. I want to quit, but if I don't, it's not the end of the world. Because if you're like me, again, there's a barrier. Like, I'll never like have sex before marriage. Like for me, that's just no. That's a hard barrier. Like you won't find me sleeping around. Probably the same for you. But when it comes to like porn and stuff, it's like, yeah, you're trying to quit, or you have like quit, but if it happens, it's not the end of the world. And I'm telling like we need to change that mentality. The same mentality we have towards like having sex before marriage should be the same one we apply to like watching, not even just like watching porn, honestly, like the people you follow on Instagram, like following IG models and all that. Like as I said earlier about like the mindset you have now will affect the mindset you'll have when you're in your marriage, right? If you're right now, you're single, and the Bible says do not covet, stop doing like, it literally says don't covet. And you can't keep your eyes to yourself when you're single. Like when you're married, that's just not gonna fall away. It'll come back. Maybe you'll have like a honeymoon period, and like the first like 5 years or whatever, like you're totally in love or whatever. But then how marriages go. Like you start getting comfortable, and those old like mentalities come in, and that's why the Bible says do not covet, because it's a mentality. It's not just, oh, I'm not sleeping around, so I'm fine. But yeah, that's kind of all I have to say on the topic. I know this was a this was a spicy one. You guys let me know what you think of the topic in the comment section below. Whether you agree, disagree. If you disagree, I want to hear your opinion. I don't know what you think, but let me know. Yeah, just what you think in general. Make sure you hit subscribe to join the Self Improvement Brotherhood, and until next time, see you boys.